Gotei 13 of Bleach's Soul Society, a group of characters that after reading Bleach quickly became one of my favorite anime groups of all time, and easily the one that always got me the most hype. Now over the continuity of Bleach, we've seen many different lineups of the heads of the 13 core guard companies, and while the overall power and might of these lineups might fluctuate, we were never left without the sense of dignity, pride, and sometimes even ecstasy from all the drip they got. I mean, Kubo won to smoke with the entire fashion industry, and overall, like I said, hype. As when a member of the pristine Gotei 13 pulled up, you knew it was going down. But with over 600 chapters of Gotei 13 content, I've gained some pretty strong opinions of each captain I just have to get out. Some good, some bad, and some that are definitely hot takes. So instead of the conventional Gotei 13 power ranking video, which in my opinion wouldn't be too much of a challenge, because I believe one thing Bleach does better than most shonen anime is making power scaling / ranking between characters pretty clear, which kind of goes into the series having a pretty good power system. Instead, we're going to be ranking the Gotei 13 on nothing but pure, subjective likability. So probably an all-in-one review of such an iconic anime group, but from my eyes. Anyway, before we get into the video, make sure to comment down below your thoughts on the Gotei 13 and your favorite captain, as well as subscribing to the channel if you enjoyed. There will be manga spoilers in this one, but without further ado, into the video. Now for a group titled the Gotei 13, I'm pretty sure we've seen nearly twice that number of captains who've actually been a member of the group. So to narrow it down, we're only going to be doing the most iconic and easily most recognizable lineup of captains, the ones from the Soul Society arc, plus a few minor changes. And when I say Soul Society, I'm not only looking strictly at that arc for content, just the captains who are part of the lineup at that time. So sadly, and I mean sadly, that means no Yoriichi Senpai, yes I'm saying Senpai, or Urahara, because we only saw them as captains for like a 10 chapter flashback, and they excel pretty well in the sensei role anyway. We also won't be looking at any of the new end of series captains like Iba, Isane, Lisa, even Rukia, because until we actually see them perform in the capacity of a captain, they're really still just substitutes. But we will be looking at the visored captains that rejoined the group after the Aizen fights such as Shinji, Rojiro Rose, and Kensei. And finally, Aizen obviously won't be discussed considering how short of his tenure as a captain was, but for the fun of it and because they are some of my favorite and top characters of Bleach, we're going to be adding Gin and Tozen to the list. So for the first captains at the bottom of my likability ranking, we got the visored captains, excluding my man Shinji of course. So Rojiro, aka Rose or Toribashi, captain of the 3rd division, and Kensei Mugarama, captain of the 9th division. These are two captains that were initially introduced to be these edgy Shinigami hollow hybrids or visors, but were later revealed to be former Gotei 13, a pretty insane moment in overall flashback. And they later rejoined the Shinigami after the Aizen fight and fought along their brothers in arms against the invading Quincy's. Now with these two captains being the very last of the list, you think they're on some Danzo or some other most hated anime character type stuff. But no, they weren't on anything like that because they never actually did anything. I mean, like I said, the whole former captain reveal got me instantly and permanently latched on with the Rank arc because I just knew that meant they were going to try and pull up and get their revenge on Aizen, which they ultimately tried to do. But even when they showed up, a Bankai Kensei fought that Wondery's kid, and considering that we never saw the conclusion of that fight, and Wondery's went on to fight Yamamoto, it's safe to assume bro got bodied just like his lieutenant. And to Rose's credit, he went up against his supposed #1 Espada and Coyote Stark along with Love, and they managed to pressure the enemy. But because it was Stark he was fighting, bro ended up on his knees. And then just for Aizen to show him that there were levels to this when he tried jumping him along with the other captains. I mean, Aizen grabbed this douche guy and smacked him with it. The level of disrespect he was dishing out was insane. Fast forward to the Quincy invasion of the 1000-year Blood War arc, and we saw so many captains put their lives on the line, get their Bankai stolen, and generate insane moments of hype with their fights and new peaks they reached throughout the arc. And Rose and Kensei ended up having more stuff done to them than they actually did themselves. I mean, they got absolutely demolished by one Sternator in Max the Masculine, got healed up, then died to another Sternator in Grimmy, was then turned into zombies by another Sternator in Gazelle, taken down by former Espada rejects, then taken control by Mayuri, a fellow captain, then, okay, well nothing because everything else was already pretty embarrassing. Yeah, overall, these were captains I was hyped up to see in combat just for them to become stepping stone characters. You know, those decently strong characters that just always end up being defeated by the new villains, just to showcase how strong said villains are. I mean, we see a perfect example of this when Renji was able to amazingly and easily defeat Master Masculine, who just got done bodying Kensei and Rose, which showed us how strong Renji has got him after his Squad Zero training. I mean, Kensei and Rose's Bankais look pretty cool despite how useless they actually are, but nothing else to say for characters that did, well, nothing. Next on this list, and this is definitely going to be a hot take, we got Retsu Unohana, the former bloodthirsty captain of both the 4th and 11th divisions. Now I can already hear the outrage, what about her being a Kenpachi in her fight with Zaraki? Yeah, I mean sure, she had a pretty good 5 chapters. I mean, I will admit the whole backstory in her relationship with Zaraki being revealed, coupled with her Bankai and a great fight in the anime did move me. But like I said, that was only for like no more than 5 chapters. She spent the majority of the series being the healer captain with literally no other major character traits besides healing. We were able to see some minor hits at her being the first Kenpachi, but even then, if she was on the screen, it was for healing and that's it. And if we're being honest, Orihime started doing a better job than her at that after a while. The only reason she isn't dead last was because of her epic interaction with Kenpachi Zaraki. The moment I saw them together, I knew it was going down in some way, some fashion, considering how we never really saw the most violent member and the most supposed gentle member of the Gotei interact before. But yeah, an epic fight, an epic Bankai reveal, and a somber death that served to unlock the true power of Kenpachi that was sealed away for so long, which is a pretty noble thing to do. But 5 chapters is not moving me that much. Following Yunohana, I got a fellow female and the loudest assassin of all time, Soifan, captain of the 2nd Division and Special Forces. And to be honest, she's not even that bad of a character as she's made out to be. I mean, besides her being unanimously known throughout the fandom as Soifan, I saw a lot of dislike towards her because of her arrogant and some might say bratty attitude. But I think those character traits actually go into the benefit of her character. I mean, she leads the Black Ops of Shinigami with a silent semi-kill of a Shikai, with one of the biggest and most noticeable Bankai we've ever seen. And I think the whole arrogant attribute is just a side effect of how hard she works and her unwavering belief in her ideals. And let's be honest, she got the smirking battle from the head honcho, Yorichi Senpai. Her fights also tend to be pretty cool, especially when we get to see some sick hand-to-hand combats with her elite Shunpo and Shunko form, coupled with the explosive nature in her Bankai. And you already know everyone likes to see a fine waifu with monster hands. Also, a pretty mocking dynamic with her assistant captain, considering how big of a simp she is for Yorichi, is nothing but pure comedic entertainment. The only reason she isn't higher is just because I like every other captain besides the next one way more, but again, I'm by no means a Soifan hater. I mean, hey, if that vice captain's tired of getting borderline abused, then by all means, Soifan, hit me up. Disregarding whatever I said just now, we got the last mid-captain of the list, Jushiro Yukitake, former captain of the 13th Division. And I don't care if bro had cancer or something, you know for a fact this dude was playing Sudoku 90% of the time the others were fighting. I mean, just look at him. To be honest, the only thing is going for this dude is the fact that he's actually one of the only good people in Soul Society who never look down on others for their lacking power, but instead is highly respectable and honorable. I mean, bro even got me feeling good about my day when I see him on the screen, which I will admit is very few times. And also the whole brothership thing he has with Kiraki as 2 of the most oldest captains was pretty cool. I mean, these bros for life stood up to both the strongest Shinigami Yamamoto and the supposed strongest Espada and Coyote Stark. And when these two were together, I could just feel the sense of competency, experience, and just couldn't imagine them ever losing. But again, we barely saw the dude. I mean, sure he was present here and there, but even then, him being at the Aizen fight felt like mandatory Gotei 13 time for him because he was a no-show throughout the Quincy War. And the one time he did show up in the war, well, you know what happened, which actually was one of the most tragic events in the series. After countless chapters and fights with no Yukitake at all, he shows up to sacrifice his life, which kind of goes hand in hand with his noble character, to be the one to save and hold the entire Soul Society together, literally, but his efforts was ultimately wasted and he ended up dying anyway. And let's not even talk about him being turned into a donut hole by that Wonderies kid. Overall, his Shikai is pretty cool, which we saw at Bankai, something that fits his humble character, and the impact he had on Ichigo was prevalent throughout the entire story. But again, we just never saw him like that. Although his introduction way back in Soul Society when he stopped an enraged Shikai Byakuya with one hand was pretty sick. Getting into what I consider to be the great captains of the Gotei, we got the esteemed founder captain who I would call the father of the Serite, Shigekuni Yamamoto, former captain commander of the Gotei 13. Now to be honest, I was not a Yamamoto fan when seeing him in the Soul Society arc. I mean, the man was really portrayed to be an old geezer who got outsmarted by Aizen for over 100 years. Literally an entire invasion, a civil war, and not 1, not 2, but 3 traitor captains were running around, and he only chose to show out against the people trying to stop the traitor's plan. But to be fair, the Yamamoto stocks did rise later throughout the series, from one showing that Aranka Master Ion in the Aizen fights in amazing fashion, who at the time was taking out assistant captains like Rengiku left and right in a brutal way, to being the only Gotei 13 captain to really pressure Aizen, to the point the villain even took steps before the fight, such as creating Wonderwise, because he didn't even want to have to fight the commander captain. But I will say, while the whole duty and sacrifice to Soul Society is honorable, for a move called the Flame Sword Boreal, which is what he used against Aizen, it did little to no damage against him. And of course, we all remember Yamamoto's final fight and appearance, in which we saw the greatest Bankai in the history of Bleach, longer arguably the best fight of the series. Luckily, this is a fight I first got to see animated with all the top tier quality adaptation of the 1000-Year Blood War arc baked into it, and the most beautiful and just epic fight when it came to the visual aspect. It's kind of funny calling a Bankai that literally had the potential to destroy the entire realm that is Soul Society beautiful, but It honestly was. And if I'm being honest, this fight is kind of the only reason Yamamoto is as high as he is, because if he was revealed to have a mid Bankai, then he really would be battling Yunohana for the second to last spot in my books. Sure, both of them have sick abilities and they are the two oldest members featured in the series, but this isn't a power ranking where these two characters will probably be at the top of the list, but a likability one, and in my opinion, they just weren't uber likable characters with barely any characterization. Next on this list, despite many deep down consideration, it is tied between Sanji Kamamaru, former captain of the 7th, and Kaname Tozen, former captain of the 9th. Two characters I believe to be two sides of the same coin, but made to convey one message on the concept of revenge and justice. Now, before I start a mini big brain analysis on why I just couldn't choose between these two characters in ranking, let me go ahead and cover my general thoughts on their likability in my eyes. With Kamamaru, well, for starters, I was messing with the Soul Society Mass Pick, not gonna lie, and that is not an insult to his werewolf look at all. Overall, to be honest, I was never really a fan of Kamamaru throughout the series before the Quincy War. I mean, he had a fairly not strong when compared to others Bankai, but one that fits his big heart. And he was also one of the captains that were fighting for the overall benefit of Aizen and the traders in the Soul Society arc. Also, at one point, bro was always spamming his oversized Bankai. I mean, every time he got any sort of screen time, it involved him charging in and always getting bodied by normal sized characters. For Kamamaru, the only thing that even gave me interest into him at first was his connection with the trader Tozen and their struggle of ideals. Now with Tozen, I'm kinda shocking myself for having him this low on the likability list, considering I think he's one of the best written characters by Kubo, and to be completely honest, hey, he's a black brother just like me. And one black character in anime that I felt was actually cool and not just the token black dude. His design in the Soul Society arc was also pretty sick compared to the other captains. So with such a cool design and concept as a character of justice, why is he ranked fairly low on the list? For I'm not gonna lie, Tozen during the Irank arc was just downright horrendous. I mean, it was so intriguing and honestly shocking to see a character who we thought to be so driven by the idea of justice and the path of least bloodshed team up with a dude in Aizen who we know for a fact was willing to spill a whole lot of blood. And that was all in order to enact this ideal justice against the world he was serving. In reality, the so-called justice he sought to enforce at the expense of others was really just revenge. The traitor reveal had just come out of nowhere and made his character to be so much more captivating. But to see what I saw in the Iranka fight almost brought me to tears. Because the moment I saw this dude's new transformation, I knew then and there it was over for him. Cause there was absolutely no way Aizen, one of the slickest dudes with the fashion in anime, was gonna be rolling with that fly looking dude in Tozen. Also, I felt Tozen's whole concept of justice was abandoned the moment he transformed, but that kinda goes into the flaws of his ideals to begin with. Now, the reason I call these two captains two different sides of the same coin is because in reality they were both left with nothing in the path of revenge. I mean, just look at Tozen. In his path for not justice but revenge, he became self-consumed by what he thought was a necessary need for power to carry out his revenge. He then allowed revenge to push him to whatever an embarrassment of an ugly looking resistance he possessed, and lost one attack from his assistant captain he would have easily dodged out his sight. And Kamamaru too, the only reason he tried so hard to attain his sick looking form and new and for sure improved Bankai was to take on Yuha, the man who killed his idol Yamamoto. Though I hate to say it and I even hated to see it, besides getting all that power with a huge sacrifice, he ended up using it all on a character who had nothing to do with Yamamoto's death, and in the end succeeded in nothing but a pretty W fight. Again, both of these characters shows us that in the path of revenge, you are ultimately left with nothing. Anyway, that's enough big brain talk for these characters. Overall decent ones. Love Soul Society Tozen. Thousand Year Blood War Kamamaru was cool, but these were just two tragic characters, and luckily, I like tragic. Following the two minority captains, we have Shinsui Kuriraku, the fairly new laid-back captain commander of the Gotei 13 after Yamamoto's death. To be honest, I never really paid too much attention to his character at first, wasn't blaming how chill he even got me feeling whenever he got screen time. He was initially introduced in Soul Society where he schooled chat so hard they dropped him as a main character and was one of the captains who fought against Aizen's plan and even stood up against the Grand Captain in Yamamoto. He also took on Kaori Stark, the supposed #1 Espada, and what I felt like was one of the better fights of the entire arc, as we got to see two of the most chillest but the most powerful dudes in the series take each other well seriously. And of course, we can't forget Shinsui's star performance and role he played as the new Captain Commander in the Quincy War, as well as his fight with Lily Baru. easily one of the top 10 strongest of the series. For someone who I never paid that much attention to at first, he really put up some of the strongest battles and feats of the series. Overall, he's a pretty likable character. I loved his backstory with Nanaro and the Quincy War, and how he's always the character who's always getting left behind and with a burden to carry. And he also carries a laid back and sometimes pervy demeanor, but is able to get the big things done, as he's one of the few captains that never let bias run their decisions. As we saw when he allowed Aizen, the literal devil of Soul Society, to enter the battle on the behalf of the Shinigami, and is way more tolerant to Ichigo's help than Yamamoto was. And not gonna lie, the zesty dress design is kinda sick. The only reason he isn't higher is because of that little chaotic theater of a Bankai. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not a part of that anime crowd who just dislikes all confusing or intricate abilities, but I am a part of the crowd who definitely prefers more combat-based Bankai like Yamamoto's or even Hitsugaya's over more unspecified and very vague hacks-based ones like Shinshui's. And can you even blame me for being a little put off by it, considering how hyped it was by Yukitake back in the Aizen fight, just for the really strong Bankai to be unsuccessful in its only usage. But again, it was a pretty great fight between him and Libaro, and this is a great character in the role he played with moving the story forward and adapting to the many changing circumstances to their verse. I guess I just like the other captains more, and speaking of the other captains, we're finally stepping into what I consider to be the best captains. Next we have the slyest, the slickest, the school threat captain in Gen Ichimaru, one of the only captains that I've engraved every single aspect of them into my brain because I'm kind of a super fan, you already know, with that Bankai, Kami Nishino Yari. Since he was a kid, he already dedicated himself to killing Aizen, and he then followed the dude for over 100 years. And as we clearly see throughout the entire series, Aizen has been manipulating an entire society, and Gin never faltered, not even for a second. And sure, while you can argue that he did all that for Engekyu and is a mega simp like Obito from Naruto and never had any morally good intentions, yeah, I still don't care considering how he was able to press the devil in Aizen the most out of every single captain advisored. You know, for a second, Aizen with a whole hole in his chest knew he was finished. And there was simply no hint beforehand or long beforehand, besides the Engekyu stuff, that was going to happen that I could pick up on, making that moment even more pivotal. From the abilities to the sly eyes to his demeanor, Gin was just so, well, he kinda did scare me at first. But contradicting my take on Yunohana only being Yunohana for 5 chapters, the 5 chapters of Gin's betrayal did in fact move me heavily. And his death and mission technically being a failure and him dying as a traitor to the Gotei 13 was kinda tragic. But that one moment where we can clearly see his eyes as he looks upon and entrusts a Dangai Ichigo with Aizen was beautiful. I probably didn't explain my likeness of Gin as well as I should, but this is a subjective video and say what you want, I don't care, Gin is the true goat of Bleach, even if he was a massive simp. Following Gin, we have another creepy school threat caliber captain in Mayuri Koritsuchi of the 12th Division. Okay, not gonna lie, this dude genuinely scared me from his introduction to the end of the series. And from the moment Ishida crossed paths with him in the Soul Society to when he fought in Hykomundo, I was actively rooting for Ishida to kill this dude. I'm pretty sure I remember a fight of his in Hykomundo against the 8th Espada, whose name I just can't pronounce, and he gave the dude a drug that made 1 second feel like 100 years on some Tsukiyomi type stuff, so when he stabbed him, it felt like multiple centuries of pain. Yeah, he was just way too unhinged for even me, or at least that was until he put all that energy into helping Soul Society, and yeah, he was pretty cool after that. And he was arguably the MVP, or at least a major player in the Quincy War for the Shinigami. From his oddball 12th Division being the one to facilitate communications and the spread of crucial information between the Shinigami to his personal contributions to the war. I mean, if you really take a look at it, he never lost a fight unlike his fellow Gotei 13 members, figured out a way to counter the Quincy teleportation, saved multiple captain class members throughout various battles like Kenpachi and Hitsugaya, some of the most powerful Shinigami they had, kills a Sternator and Gazelle, defeated another Pepe, literally owned a captain class personal army at one point. And we can't forget his most important contribution and overall character moment of the series in his fight with one of Yiwatch's personal guard, Pernida. It was in this one fight I felt we really got to see what made Mayuri Mayuri, because we were initially led to believe he was just simply a crazy scientist. I mean, just look at bro's face, that found joy in experimenting with life. Well, technically he still finds joy in that, but it's in the service of society. But it's in this fight we find out that the creation of life out of nothing was the true motivation of Mayuri, someone who despised anything that was perfect and unable to be modified. Seeing Mayuri genuinely smile as he watches the success of his creation slash child Nemu heavily moved me. Him having his hair down during that moment also had an effect on me in a non-zesty way. And this was also the moment he finally one-upped his former captain and benefactor Kisuke Urahara. Overall, this was a character who has the power, the feats, the characterization. I just felt like we needed a reason for him other than the typical mad scientist trope, and we got that. And like I said, don't get me wrong, bro is still a crazy dude, but now he has better aligned his crazy tendencies with the goals of Soul Society. Anyway, crazy likable dude after the Quincy War. Next on this list, or should I say next on this list backward, we have the comedian of the Gotei, Shinji Hirako, leader of the Visors and captain of the 5th Division. Yeah, not gonna lie, this is one of the super subjective rankings that have nothing to do with much of what the character did during the story. I just really like this character for some reason beyond me. Despite the seriousness of any situation, he is still able to provide some comedic relief here and there, but can still be the most level-headed guy in combat. He has probably my favorite and most cool Sheik guy, and a Bankai so crazy he can't even use it in the Serite. A fire OST in the anime, he actually did something against Aizen when he caught him lacking and tripping, unlike others, a clean design, and sure, I'll admit, bro got bodied a lot during the Quincy War, but again, I don't care. I think Shinji is just one of those characters that's the perfect balance of fun and series, and yeah, crazy likable dude considering he's this high on the list. So the next and top 3 captains on this list are easily in my top 5 for all Bleach characters, and screw likable, I love these characters. First in this lovable tier is Byakuya Kuchiki, the noble captain of the 6th Division, the main and best antagonist of Society Ichigo, and the character that was torn between his oath to his family's nobility and oath to his wife to protect Rukia, his sister-in-law. This struggle to uphold both oaths resulted in one of my favorites and best character arcs in the series. I mean, Society Byakuya was just that dude, cause even when absolute monsters like Kenpachi and a quarter monster and Renji running around, when Byakuya Kuchiki stepped on the screen, you could feel the dignity and lethalness coming off of him. Bro also had 2 of the best fights of the arc with Renji and that god tier highly anticipated match with Ichigo. And just trust me when I say the hype I felt when reading his fight with Ichigo was definitely god tier, because when Ichigo went Bankai, I was screaming right with him. And you can say that's more towards Ichigo, but Byakuya was the perfect antagonist to push Ichigo to reach new heights of power. I mean, we never saw his stance on Rukia's execution waver once before his final fight with Ichigo, which made his fight with Renji that much intriguing and had me on my toes just wondering how it would end. So while we never really got to see Byakuya's characters fleshed out again as it was in Soul Society, he was still showing up with a slick design, a fire Bankai, and some of the best fights the series has seen. So the character art displayed in Soul Society was enough to carry him forever with me. And what other captain is standing up to him wanting to smoke with a shirtless Kenpachi? I could go on a rant on each of these top 3 captains, so I'm going to try to limit it with Byakuya being the perfect model for a good non-villain antagonist. The second character on this list, and better known as a monster, a demon, a Kenpachi, we have Kenpachi Zaraki. Kenpachi's perfect uber high placement can be explained by simply looking at his lengthy resume. Starting at the beginning of Soul Society, he was already hinted and stated to be a complete monster and the so-called strongest. When put up against the main character who at that point was catching captain class bodies left and right, well, bro was literally triple nerfed and still let Ichigo get a free swing in. He wanted to absolutely destroy Ichigo with a tap and proceeds to teach him about combat between Soul Reapers while doing it. And even though he lost, aka was a tie, aka plot armor, aka literally triple nerf, yeah, he was still unbeatable. Later took on 2 other Gotei 13 captains in Tosin and Kamamaru at the same time, which stood Tosin's Bankai, destroyed him, and just embarrassed him both overall. And again was triple nerf while doing it. Destroyed the 6th Espada the moment he put 2 hands on his sword instead of 1. Took on Yami, the theoretical strongest Espada, and Byakuya at the same time, and while shirtless, one-shotted a Fullbringer, demolished 3 Sternator with ease. And even though he somehow lost to Yuha, I mean, he again wasn't anywhere near his full potential, and to be honest, I was in major disbelief he lost. Though despite the loss, he was already classified to be a special war threat because of his battle might, which directly implies he has a higher might in battle than the likes of Yamamoto, who wasn't classified as a war threat. He finally reached full potential after beating Unohana and lifting his mental limiters. And by the way, did I forget to mention he nearly killed Unohana, one of the strongest Shinigami at the time, as a child? Using his Shikai, he beat an enemy who could literally turn his imagination into reality, and also taught him the thrills of fighting. Had all the Shinigami, including the captains on site, moving to protect him when he was weakened. Proceeded to unleash an epic Bankai against one of the strongest and unbeatable characters of the series, and did some considerable damage. Only reason he was taken out of combat because his overwhelming power was too much for his body to handle. And he was still taking on said villain with his arm cut off and in base form. And bro did all of these things I've mentioned with a smile and some addicting charisma. Enough said on the ultimate battle demon, Kenpachi Zaraki. Finally, in my subjective opinion, the most likable captain at the top of the list is none other than the young, charming, prodigy but absolute powerhouse Toshiro Hitsugaya. And I guess you can add a Zanpakuto Hiranmaru to the top of the list too. Now, to be honest, I don't really know if the fandom's perception of Hitsugaya, as I've never really seen too much of him online, but when with my eyes look at him, I see an easy top 3 character of Bleach, and that's objectively. Because you already know with bias, he's top 1 in my books. Anyway, to be fair, at the start of the series, the Hitsugaya stocks were not there. Sure, he was one of the few captains to figure out Aizen and Gin, and he also got some of the most screen time, but I swear I started this dude use his Bankai the most and he never got a clean, decisive win out of it. I mean, the whole Hiranmaru was starting to become a joke in my books, not gonna lie. But even with all of his questionable wins, one trait of his that stuck out to me than any other captain was his hard work. For a crazy young prodigy with all the talent in the world, or should I say realm, seeing him work tirelessly to master a Bankai between each and every major arc moved me. And when he did master his absolutely insane Bankai, he wanted to carry the entire Shinigami race and Gotei 13 on his back in the final fight with Gerard Valkyrie, along with Byakuya and Kenpachi, the last 2 picks. He also, in my opinion, is one of the more mature captains and always dependable in a high-stakes situation. I mean, even with his Bankai stolen, bro still managed to survive a head-on encounter with Basby, someone whose fire attacks are literally Hitsugaya's weakness. Every time Hitsugaya was on the page, it all just felt epic and high tier, which probably has something to do with his ginormous and fierce Bankai that he definitely managed to utilize perfectly when it came to that hype. I mean, Kubo did a perfect job of displaying personal and power growth with his character, which I believe might be the Shinigami's chosen one, just saying. Ichigo who? And you can tell Kubo was eating when he drew Hitsugaya in the Quincy War, because the panels we were getting him was just perfect. Even when he was zombified, he still looked sick. Also, when you remember that he's extremely young, yet already more powerful when compared to the other captains, like I said, carrying Society against Gerard. At that point, bro, I'm trying to be Hitsugaya, like, sign me up for whatever. Especially with Rengoku as a vice captain following his every order. Yeah, with all that said, I just don't get why you wouldn't love, or at least highly like, Toshiro Hitsugaya. So that concludes my pretty long video on the Bleach's Gotei 13. For the most part, I think I got all my thoughts out, barring any hour-long rants like Kenpachi or Hitsugaya. Again, this for the most part was a subjective ranking, which means it was based on my personal feelings that I'll be more than happy to defend in the comments down below. Anyway, this is the end of the video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more Bleach bangers like these. Comment down below your favorite Gotei 13 captain. Turn on post notifications. Follow the Twitter at Basically Anime. And with all that said, Kenpachi Soul is your favorite verse. Byakuya got a better hairdo than your favorite anime character. And Hitsugaya simply is him. Have a nice day.